Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the observation window of the transport shuttle, watching the massive research station grow larger against the black canvas of space. Theta Station orbited a green and blue planet below, and somewhere down there lived creatures that most of the galaxy feared to approach. Sarah pressed her hand against the cool glass and smiled. This was exactly the kind of challenge she had dreamed about since joining the Terran space program. The shuttle docked with a gentle thump, and Sarah gathered her 3 bags of equipment. The airlock hissed open, revealing a long corridor with walls that glowed a soft blue. She stepped through and immediately noticed how empty the hallway seemed. Back on Earth, research stations buzzed with activity. Here the silence felt heavy and deliberate. A creature waited at the end of the corridor. It stood on 6 legs, each ending in delicate hooves. Its body reminded Sarah of a deer mixed with something insect-like, covered in pale green fur that shimmered under the lights. 2 large eyes set on the sides of its head tracked her movement. The creature's ears flattened against its skull as Sarah approached. "Dr. Chen," the creature said through a translation device clipped to what might have been its collar. "I am Station Director Kelleth. Welcome to Theta Station." The words were polite, but Kelleth took 3 steps backward as Sarah came closer. Sarah stopped walking and gave a small wave instead. "Thank you, Director. I'm excited to be here." Kelleth's eyes never left her face. Sarah knew what the director saw. Forward-facing eyes that tracked movement the way a hunter tracked prey. Kelleth belonged to the Vrathan species, herbivores who had evolved running from things that looked very much like Sarah. "Your quarters are in the human wing," Kelleth said, gesturing with one leg down a side corridor. "We have prepared them according to Terran specifications. I will brief you on station protocols tomorrow at 800 hours. Please remain in your quarters until then." Sarah wanted to argue that she could explore now, but she recognized fear when she saw it. Even across species lines, the body language was clear. Kelleth wanted her contained and accounted for. "Of course," Sarah said softly. "I'll stay in my quarters. Thank you for the warm welcome." Kelleth's translation device made a sound that might have been relieved. The director turned and walked away quickly, hooves clicking on the metal floor. Sarah watched the alien disappear around a corner before heading to her assigned quarters. The room was small but functional. A bed, a desk, a food synthesizer, and a bathroom. The walls displayed a rotating image of Earth's forests. Sarah unpacked her bags and found herself thinking about the fear in Kelleth's eyes. She had seen that look before back on Earth when she worked with wildlife rehabilitation. Prey animals looked at humans that way until they learned that not every predator wanted to hunt them. The next morning, Sarah arrived at Kelleth's office exactly on time. The director sat behind a curved desk and 2 other aliens flanked the room. One looked like a large rabbit with 4 arms. The other resembled a bird, though it had teeth in its beak. Both watched Sarah with wide, unblinking eyes. "Dr. Chen," Kelleth began, "you understand that your presence here is unusual. In the 300 years since the Galactic Union formed, only 5 predator species have joined our community. Humans are the 6th. Sarah nodded and sat in the chair Kelleth indicated. She noticed the chair was positioned far from the desk, maximizing the distance between her and the director. "Most species in the Union evolved from prey animals," the rabbit creature added. Its translator identified it as Dr. Venn, the station's chief xenobiologist. "We have learned to work together because we share common fears and common histories. Predator species make us uncomfortable." "I understand," Sarah said, "but I'm not here to make anyone uncomfortable. I'm here to study the wildlife on Theta 7. The bird creature introduced as Professor Krill made a clicking sound. "Yes, about that. We have reviewed your assignment. You are to study the Keshtar." Sarah felt excitement bubble up in her chest. The Keshtar were the apex predators of Theta 7. 6-legged felines with crystalline claws and pack-hunting intelligence. She had read every report about them during the 6-month journey from Earth. "That's right," Sarah confirmed. "I'm looking forward to beginning observations." Kelleth's ears flattened again. "Dr. Chen, you must understand. No one has studied the Keshtar up close. They are too dangerous. Previous researchers have only used long-range observation equipment from orbit." "Then I'll be breaking new ground," Sarah said with a smile. Dr. Venn's 4 arms gestured nervously. "We assigned you to the Keshtar because you are also a predator. We thought perhaps you would have better success or at least better survival instincts when facing another predator species." Sarah finally understood. They had given her the most dangerous assignment because they assumed she would either succeed where prey species had failed, or she would be killed, and they would lose only a predator rather than one of their own. The realization stung, but Sarah kept her expression neutral. "I see," she said quietly. "When can I begin?" Kelleth tapped something on a console. "We have prepared a surface expedition for 3 days from now. You will have a full kit of monitoring equipment, a defensive shelter, and constant communication with the station. At the first sign of danger, you will transport back immediately." "Agreed," Sarah said, though she had no intention of running at the first sign of danger. Fear and danger were not the same thing. Over the next 3 days, Sarah explored the parts of the station she was allowed to access. Other researchers gave her wide berth in the hallways. In the cafeteria, conversation stopped when she entered. She ate alone, watching the other species cluster together at tables far from hers. On the second day, a young Vrathan approached her table. It was smaller than Kelleth, with darker fur and bright orange markings. "Dr. Chen," the young alien said, voice shaking slightly. "I am Pix. I am a junior researcher in xenobiology." Sarah looked up and smiled gently. "Hello, Pix. Would you like to sit down?" Pix hesitated, then pulled out a chair, though it sat on the far side of the table. "I wanted to say that I admire your courage. Studying the Keshtar is brave work." "Thank you," Sarah said. "I'm excited about it." Pix tilted its head, a gesture Sarah was learning meant curiosity. "Are you not afraid?" "The Keshtar have killed 3 research drones and destroyed 2 monitoring stations." Sarah considered the question carefully. "I'm cautious," she said, "but fear without understanding is just panic. I want to understand the Keshtar before I decide whether to be afraid." Pix's ears perked up, another gesture Sarah was cataloging. "That is a very predator way of thinking." "Maybe," Sarah agreed. "Or maybe it's just a scientist way of thinking." They talked for another 20 minutes before Pix excused itself nervously. Sarah watched the young researcher leave and felt a small spark of hope. If one alien was willing to approach her, to talk to her as a person rather than a threat, maybe others would follow. On the morning of the expedition, Sarah suited up in the equipment bay. The environmental suit was bulky but necessary. Theta 7's atmosphere was breathable, but the suit provided protection and monitoring. Kelleth supervised the preparations from behind a glass partition. "Remember," the director's voice crackled through the suit's speakers, "at any sign of aggression, you transport back. No exceptions." Sarah checked her equipment one last time. Cameras, sensors, sample collectors, and emergency rations. Everything was in order. "Understood, Director," she said. "I'll be careful." The transport beam activated and the station dissolved around her. A moment later, Sarah stood on alien soil under an alien sky, surrounded by alien trees. Somewhere in this forest, the Keshtar were hunting, and Sarah was ready to meet them. The forest of Theta 7 smelled like cinnamon and rain. Sarah stood still for several minutes after transporting down, letting her senses adjust to the new environment. The trees towered overhead, their bark a deep purple color that seemed to shift in the dappled sunlight. Strange birds, or things like birds, called to each other in the canopy. The ground beneath her boots was soft with moss that glowed faintly blue. Sarah activated her helmet camera and began a slow visual sweep of the area. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen, beginning surface observations at Aero 900 station time. The forest canopy is approximately 40 meters high. Visibility is good. Air temperature is 22 degrees Celsius. No immediate signs of Keshtar presence." Through her helmet speakers, she heard Kelleth's voice from orbit. "Acknowledged, Dr. Chen. We have your position locked. Please proceed with caution." Sarah smiled and began walking. She had studied the maps of this region extensively. About 2 kilometers northwest, previous drone footage had shown evidence of a Keshtar den. Adult tracks, prey remains, and territorial markings. Sarah planned to set up her observation equipment near enough to monitor the den without entering what the Keshtar would consider their core territory. The walk took nearly an hour. Sarah moved carefully, stopping frequently to record plant life and smaller creatures. A thing like a lizard with feathers scurried across her path. Something else, hidden in the undergrowth, made a sound like wind chimes. The alien ecosystem buzzed with life. Sarah found the perfect spot on a small rise overlooking a clearing. In the center of the clearing, she could see the den entrance, a dark opening beneath the roots of a massive tree. She unpacked her equipment, setting up motion sensors, cameras, and audio recording devices. The work took another hour, and by the time she finished, sweat soaked the inside of her environmental suit. Observation post established, Sarah reported. Beginning passive monitoring protocol. Acknowledged, came Kelleth's reply. We recommend you remain in the defensive shelter. Sarah looked at the small portable shelter she had set up. It was basically a reinforced tent with energy shielding, safe but limiting. I'll keep it in sight, Director. But I need to be able to move to adjust equipment. There was a long pause before Kelleth responded. Approved, but maintained constant communication. Hours passed. Sarah sat on a fallen log, watching the den through her binoculars. The sun moved across the alien sky, casting long shadows. Birds called. Insects buzzed. But the den remained quiet and dark. Then, around mid-afternoon, something moved. A Keshtar emerged from the den, and Sarah caught her breath. The creature was magnificent. It stood nearly 2 meters tall at the shoulder, supported by 6 powerful legs. Its fur was a deep amber color with black stripes that seemed to absorb light. Crystalline claws, each as long as Sarah's forearm, glinted in the sunlight. The Keshtar's head was broad and flat, with forward-facing eyes like her own. A predator's eyes. Sarah keyed her camera to track the creature as it stretched, each muscle rippling beneath its pelt. The Keshtar lifted its head, sniffing the air. For a moment, Sarah worried it had caught her scent, but the wind was in her favor. The creature turned and loped off into the forest, moving with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large. Adult Keshtar observed. Sarah whispered into her comm. Female based on size and markings. Departed the den heading east. Likely hunting. Should you return to the station? Kelleth asked, worry evident even through the translator. No, Sarah said firmly. This is perfect. With the adults hunting, I can set up closer monitoring equipment. Before Kelleth could argue, Sarah muted her comm and began moving down the slope toward the den. She knew it was risky, but opportunities like this were rare. If she could place cameras right at the den entrance, the footage would be invaluable. She was halfway across the clearing when she heard a sound behind her. A soft chirping, almost like a bird, but deeper. Sarah froze and turned slowly. A Keshtar cub sat at the edge of the clearing, watching her. The cub was maybe a third the size of the adult, covered in fluffy amber fur that stuck up in all directions. Its crystalline claws were small but still sharp. The cub tilted its head, studying Sarah with bright golden eyes. Then it chirped again and took a step forward. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest. This was not in any protocol. The cub was young, maybe equivalent to a 3-month-old Earth kitten. Curious, playful, and potentially deadly if it called for its parents. Hey there, little one, Sarah said softly, keeping her voice gentle. She slowly crouched down, making herself smaller and less threatening. Where did you come from? The cub chirped and bounded forward 3 steps, then stopped. Its tail, thick and striped, swished back and forth. Sarah recognized the body language. This was play behavior. The cub thought she might be interesting. I'm not a toy, Sarah said, still keeping her voice calm. And your mom probably wouldn't like you playing with strange aliens. The cub didn't understand her words, but it understood her tone. It crept closer, belly low to the ground, rear end up in the air. Sarah had seen Earth kittens do the same thing before they pounced. Don't even think about it, Sarah warned. The cub pounced. Sarah barely had time to raise her arms before 30 kilograms of curious predator cub crashed into her. She fell backward onto the soft moss, and the cub immediately began investigating her. It sniffed her helmet, patted her chest plate with sheathed claws, and chirped excitedly. Okay, Sarah laughed despite herself. Yes, I'm very interesting. Then the cub found her glove. It grabbed her left hand in its mouth and bit down, not hard, but with enough pressure that Sarah felt the teeth through the fabric. The outer layer of the glove tore with a soft ripping sound. This was the moment. Every protocol said that when a predator attacked, you fought back or retreated. You showed dominance or you showed submission. But Sarah had spent years working with Earth predators, and she knew something the protocol writers didn't. Young predators needed to learn bite inhibition. They needed to learn that biting too hard hurt their playmates, and the way they learned was through feedback. Sarah opened her mouth and let out a loud, dramatic yelp. Ow! The cub released her hand instantly. It jumped back, ears flattening against its skull, eyes wide. It made a small, worried sound, somewhere between a chirp and a whine. That's right, Sarah said, sitting up and cradling her hand dramatically. Too hard. That hurt. The cub crept forward again, moving slowly. It reached out with one paw, gently touching Sarah's glove without using claws. Then it looked up at her face as if checking whether she was okay. Sarah's heart melted. It's okay, baby. I'm fine, but you need to be gentle. A roar split the air. Sarah looked up to see the adult female Keshtar standing at the edge of the clearing. The creature's lips were pulled back, showing teeth as long as Sarah's fingers. Every muscle was tensed, ready to spring. Sarah didn't move. She kept her hand on the cub, gentle and non-threatening. The cub chirped and bounded toward its mother, apparently unconcerned. The adult Keshtar watched Sarah with intense focus. Sarah could see the calculation happening behind those golden eyes. She had heard her cub cry out. She had seen a strange creature with her offspring. But she had also seen that strange creature not fighting, not attacking, not behaving like prey or predator. Sarah slowly stood up, keeping her movements smooth and deliberate. She held up both hands, palms out, showing she had no weapons. Then she took one step backward. Then another. The adult Keshtar's ears slowly came forward. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly. She bent down and licked her cub, checking for injuries, then looked at Sarah again. Sarah took another step back. I didn't hurt your baby, she said softly, knowing the Keshtar couldn't understand the words but hoping the tone would carry meaning. Your baby is safe. The Keshtar watched Sarah retreat all the way back to her observation post. Only when Sarah reached her equipment did the great cat turn away, herding her cub back toward the den with gentle nudges. Sarah collapsed onto the ground, adrenaline finally catching up with her. Her hands shook as she unmuted her comm. Dr. Chen, Kelleth's voice exploded in her helmet. Your vitals spiked. What happened? Are you injured? Sarah laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. I just had a close encounter with a Keshtar cub. And Kelleth, you're not going to believe what happened. Sarah transported back to the station 3 hours later. Her equipment packed and her suit camera carrying what might be the most important footage in xenobiological history. She barely made it through the airlock before Kelleth appeared, moving faster than Sarah had ever seen a Vrathan move. Medical bay now, Kelleth demanded, though the director still maintained a careful distance. I'm fine, Sarah protested. The glove took the damage, not me, see? She held up her hand, wiggling her fingers, but Kelleth wouldn't hear arguments. Sarah found herself ushered to the medical bay where Dr. Venn waited with several scanning devices. The rabbit-like alien checked her thoroughly, all 4 arms working at once to operate different instruments. No injuries, Dr. Venn finally announced. No puncture wounds, no broken skin. The environmental suit glove prevented any real damage. I told you, Sarah said. Kelleth's ears flattened. You told me. But you didn't tell me you were going to let a Keshtar cub attack you. It didn't attack me, Sarah corrected. It played with me. There's a difference. Not to us, Kelleth snapped, then seemed to catch himself. The director took a deep breath through his narrow nostrils. Please explain what happened. The footage will take time to analyze and I need to file a report. Sarah spent the next hour describing every detail of the encounter. Kelleth listened with growing disbelief, occasionally interrupting with questions. When Sarah explained how she had yelped and the cub had released her, Kelleth actually sat down. You made a prey sound, the director said slowly, to an apex predator. I made a pain sound, Sarah corrected. I gave social feedback. The cub bit too hard and I let it know. And it stopped. Yes. And then the mother arrived and instead of killing you, she simply left. Yes. Kelleth was quiet for a long moment. This should not have worked. But it did, Sarah said. By the next morning, Sarah's suit camera footage had spread through the entire research station. Sarah woke to find 17 messages waiting for her, all from researchers requesting meetings. The mess hall, usually empty when she arrived, was packed with aliens who stopped their conversations to stare at her as she entered. Pix, the young Vrathan, hurried over to Sarah's table. Dr. Chen, everyone is talking about what you did, is it true? Did the Keshtar cub really let you go because you made a sound? Sarah nodded, taking a bite of synthesized eggs. That's the simple version, yes, but how? Pix's ears quivered with excitement. How did you know to do that? Before Sarah could answer, an announcement echoed through the station. All senior research staff report to conference room A immediately. Dr. Sarah Chen, your presence is required. Sarah finished her breakfast quickly and headed to the conference room. Inside, she found not just the station's senior staff, but several holograms of aliens from other stations and ships. This was a major gathering. Kelleth stood at the head of the table. Please sit, Dr. Chen. We have many questions. For the next 2 hours, Sarah answered questions from xenobiologists, behavioral scientists, and even military strategists. They watched the footage repeatedly, analyzing every movement, every sound. Professor Krill, the bird-like alien, paused the footage at the moment the cub released Sarah's hand. "This is the crucial moment. You made a sound that indicated pain or distress. The young Keshtar responded by releasing you and showing what appears to be concern." "Why?" Sarah leaned forward. "Because the cub was playing, not hunting. Young predators play to learn hunting skills, yes, but they also play to learn social skills. They need to know how hard they can bite their siblings or pack members without causing real harm. If they bite too hard during play, the other animal yelps or cries and they learn to control their bite force." "But you are not a Keshtar," Dr. Venn pointed out, two of his arms gesturing at the screen. "You are not part of their pack or family group." "No," Sarah agreed. "But pain sounds are often universal. A cry of pain sounds similar across many species. The cub understood that it had hurt me, even if it didn't understand what I was." One of the holographic aliens, a creature that looked like a bundle of tentacles, spoke up. "Dr. Chen, are you saying that predator species have empathy? That they can recognize pain in other species and choose to stop causing it?" Sarah chose her words carefully. "I'm saying that social predator species, predators that hunt in packs or raise young together, often develop empathy as a survival trait. They need to be able to read emotions and social cues in their own species. Sometimes that ability extends to other species." The conference room erupted in overlapping conversations. Kelleth called for order, his hooves clicking sharply on the floor. "Please, everyone, one at a time." A dignified alien with silver scales and 3 eyes spoke next. Sarah recognized them as Commander Threll, military coordinator for this sector. "Dr. Chen, on Earth, are there other examples of this kind of interaction between predator species?" Sarah nodded. "Many. Humans domesticated wolves thousands of years ago. We turned them into dogs through selective breeding, yes, but the initial contact was based on mutual benefit and social understanding. We recognized each other as social predators. We learned to communicate." "You befriended your predators," Professor Krill said, sounding shocked. "We befriended some predators," Sarah corrected. "We also befriended prey animals. Horses, cows, chickens. Humans learned to work with many species, predator and prey alike." Commander Threll's 3 eyes all focused on Sarah. "Because humans are omnivores. You are both predator and prey." "Exactly," Sarah said. "We understand both perspectives. We know what it's like to hunt, and we know what it's like to be hunted. Maybe that's why we developed such complex social structures. We needed to cooperate with our own kind to survive." Kelleth stood up, his posture rigid with thought. "Dr. Chen, what you're describing challenges everything we understand about predator species. The Galactic Union has quarantined 17 predator species because we assumed they were too dangerous for standard contact." "Maybe they are dangerous," Sarah said, "but maybe they're also capable of social interaction if approached correctly. The Keshtar mother could have killed me. She was bigger, faster, and stronger, but she saw that I hadn't hurt her cub. She saw me retreating, showing non-aggression. She made a choice based on social information." Dr. Venn's 4 arms trembled slightly. "You're suggesting we've been wrong. For 300 years, we've isolated predator species because we feared them. But perhaps we should have been trying to communicate." "I'm not saying it would be easy," Sarah cautioned. "Different predator species would require different approaches. And some might truly be too dangerous. But we won't know until we try." The conference continued for another hour, with representatives calling in from across the sector. By the end, a proposal had been drafted. Sarah would continue her work with the Keshtar, documenting her methods and results. Other researchers would study her footage and develop potential approaches for other predator species. And Kelleth would send a formal report to the Galactic Council, recommending a review of quarantine policies. After the meeting, Sarah found Pix waiting outside the conference room. The young Vrathan shifted nervously from hoof to hoof. "Dr. Chen, I have a request. I know I'm just a junior researcher, but I would like to observe your work with the Keshtar. I want to learn your methods." Sarah felt warmth spread through her chest. "Pix, that might be dangerous for you. The Keshtar are apex predators." "I know," Pix said, ears flattening briefly in fear before rising again with determination. "But if we're going to change how the galaxy sees predator species, we need to overcome our own fears. Prey species like me need to learn what you already know, that predators aren't just monsters. They're people too in their own way. Sarah smiled. Then yes, Pix, you can observe my work. But we'll take it slow. Baby steps. That night Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the 17 quarantined predator species. How many of them might be like the Keshtar? How many might be capable of social interaction, of cooperation, of choosing not to kill? How many had been isolated for centuries because no one knew how to talk to them? She got up and went to her computer, pulling up files on the quarantined species. There were the Vrex, large reptilian predators with pack-hunting behavior. The Korth, solitary ambush predators with incredible intelligence. The Marin, aquatic predators that communicated through bioluminescence. Each file was marked with warnings about aggression, about danger, about the impossibility of peaceful contact. But Sarah saw something else in the descriptions. She saw social structures, parental care, and territorial behavior. She saw species that just might be capable of more than the galaxy gave them credit for. Tomorrow she would return to Theta 7. She would continue observing the Keshtar, learning their language and their customs, and maybe, just maybe, she would prove that humans weren't special because they were predators. They were special because they had learned that every species, predator or prey, deserved a chance to be understood. Over the following weeks, Sarah established a routine. Every morning she transported down to Theta 7, setting up her observation post near the Keshtar den. She documented everything: feeding patterns, social hierarchies, communication methods, and territorial boundaries. Slowly, carefully, she began to understand the language of the apex predators. The Keshtar pack consisted of 6 adults and 3 cubs. The female who had confronted Sarah that first day was clearly the matriarch. Sarah started calling her Amber for the color of her magnificent coat. The other adults deferred to her, bringing her the best parts of kills and grooming her frequently. The cub who had bitten Sarah's glove appeared frequently. Sarah named him Scout because he was always the first to investigate new things. Scout seemed fascinated by the strange 2-legged creature who kept appearing near his home. He would sit at the edge of the clearing watching Sarah with bright, curious eyes. On her 5th visit, Sarah brought something new, a recording device loaded with human sounds. She played gentle music first, soft instrumental pieces that wouldn't startle the Keshtar. Amber emerged from the den, ears swiveling toward the sound. She approached cautiously, sniffed the device, then settled down nearby to listen. Music appreciation, Sarah whispered into her comm. The matriarch is showing interest in novel auditory stimuli. From orbit, Keleth's voice responded. Is this safe? You're introducing foreign elements into their environment. It's sound, Sarah said. No different than bird calls or wind. I'm testing whether they can recognize non-threatening novelty. Scout crept closer, fascinated by the music. He sat beside his mother, and soon other pack members joined them. For 20 minutes, the Keshtar pack lay in a loose circle around Sarah's observation post, listening to human music. When the recording ended, Amber stood, made a soft chirping sound to her pack, and they melted back into the forest. Sarah's heart raced with excitement. Did you record that, Keleth? They chose to stay and listen. They weren't afraid. They were interested. I recorded it, Keleth confirmed, his voice holding a note of wonder. Dr. Chen, you're building trust with an apex predator species. We're building communication, Sarah corrected. The breakthrough came 2 weeks later. Sarah was adjusting a camera when Scout approached from the tree line. But this time he wasn't alone. 2 other cubs followed him, smaller and more timid. Scout chirped at them, then bounded toward Sarah's observation post. Sarah sat down slowly, making herself small and non-threatening. Scout stopped a few meters away and chirped again, looking back at his siblings. It almost seemed like he was introducing them. Hey, Scout, Sarah said softly. Who are your friends? The smaller cubs crept forward, staying behind Scout. One was darker than the others, with black fur that shimmered purple in the sunlight. The other had unusual white markings on her face. Sarah named them Shadow and Patches in her head. Scout approached Sarah and gently pawed at her boot. He looked up at her face, golden eyes bright. Then he did something that made Sarah catch her breath. He opened his mouth wide, showing his teeth, but kept his jaw relaxed. It was the same expression Earth cats made when they were content, a slow blink of trust. Oh, Sarah whispered. You remember me, don't you? You remember that I didn't hurt you? Scout chirped and head-butted her knee just like a house cat asking for affection. Sarah slowly reached out and touched the top of his head, feeling the soft fur between his ears. Scout leaned into the touch, purring. The sound was deeper than an earth cat's purr, more like a rumbling engine, but the meaning was clear. Shadow and Patches watched this interaction, then crept closer. Within minutes, all three cubs were investigating Sarah, sniffing her suit, pawing at her equipment, and accepting gentle touches. Sarah documented everything, her voice shaking with emotion. "This is remarkable," she said. "The cubs are treating me as a safe, familiar presence. They're showing affiliative behavior." From the tree line, Amber watched. The matriarch's expression was unreadable, but she made no move to stop her cubs from interacting with Sarah. After an hour, Amber called her cubs with a low rumble. They immediately bounded back to her, but Scout turned and chirped at Sarah once more before disappearing into the forest. That evening, the station's conference room was packed. Scientists crowded around the main screen watching Sarah's footage of the cubs. Pix sat in the front row, ears upright with excitement. "This changes everything," Dr. Venn said, his forearms gesturing at the screen. "Young Keshtar are imprinting on Dr. Chen as a non-threatening presence. They're incorporating her into their social learning." Professor Krill ruffled his feathers. "But why? What is Dr. Chen doing that makes the Keshtar trust her?" Sarah stood to address the group. "I'm not doing anything special. I'm just using basic social communication that any pack animal would understand. I make myself small and non-threatening. I respect their space and their boundaries. I give clear signals about my intentions, and when they show friendly behavior, I reciprocate appropriately." "Can you teach us these signals?" Pix asked. "Could prey species learn to communicate with predators this way?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "Maybe, but it would require overcoming instinctive fear responses. When you see a predator, every instinct tells you to run. You need to override that instinct and look at the predator's actual behavior. Is it hunting? Is it defensive? Is it curious? Learning to read those signals takes practice." Over the next month, Sarah conducted training sessions with interested researchers. She started with videos, teaching them to recognize body language in predator species. Ears forward meant alertness and interest. Ears back meant fear or aggression. A relaxed jaw was friendly. A tense jaw was dangerous. Slow movements showed non-aggression. Quick movements might trigger chase instincts. Pix absorbed every lesson with fierce determination. The young Vrathan watched footage for hours, learning to distinguish between a playful pounce and an actual attack, between warning growls and friendly rumbles. "I want to see them," Pix said one day. "The Keshtar. I want to observe them with you." Sarah hesitated. "Pix, you understand this is dangerous for you specifically? Your species evolved as prey. Your instincts will scream at you to run." "I know," Pix said, "but I need to try. If prey species and predator species are ever going to work together, someone has to be first." "Let me be first." Sarah couldn't argue with that logic. 3 days later, she transported down to Theta 7 with Pix beside her. The young Vrathan's legs shook in the environmental suit, but Pix's ears remained upright with determination. They set up at the observation post, and Sarah explained what they were seeing. The Keshtar pack moved through the forest like liquid shadows. Amber led a hunting party past the clearing, ignoring the observation post. The cubs played near the den entrance, pouncing on each other and practicing their stalking skills. Then Scout noticed them. The cub's head came up, ears swiveling toward the observation post. He chirped and bounded over, approaching Sarah with familiar confidence. But when he saw Pix, Scout stopped. His ears flattened slightly, and he lowered his body into a cautious crouch. "He sees you as prey," Sarah whispered. "Stay very still." Pix froze, every muscle locked. Sarah could hear the young Vrathan's breathing quicken in panic. Scout crept closer, his predatory instincts clearly engaged by the presence of a prey animal. "Pix," Sarah said calmly. "Don't run. Look at him. Really look. What is his body language telling you?" Pix's voice shook. "His ears are forward. His tail is up. He's curious." "That's right," Sarah said. "He's not hunting. He's investigating. If he were hunting, he'd be perfectly still, waiting to pounce. This is curiosity, not aggression." Scout stopped 3 meters from Pix and tilted his head. He chirped, a questioning sound. Pix whimpered, a sound that clearly triggered Scout's prey drive. The cub's muscles tensed. "Pix, stop making prey sounds," Sarah said urgently. "Take a deep breath. Be calm." Pix struggled but managed to stop whimpering. Scout's tension eased slightly. He sat down, still watching Pix intently. Minutes passed in silence. Then Scout did something unexpected. He slowly blinked at Pix, the same gesture of trust he'd shown Sarah. Then he stood, walked to Sarah, head-butted her knee, and trotted back toward the den. Pix collapsed, legs giving out. "He didn't attack me." "No," Sarah said gently. "He didn't. He saw you with me, someone he trusts. And he made a choice." Over the following weeks, Pix returned to Theta 7 multiple times. Each visit, the young Vrathan became more comfortable around the Keshtar pack. Scout seemed to understand that Pix was under Sarah's protection and treated the prey species with the same gentle curiosity he showed Sarah. Other researchers began requesting surface visits. Not everyone was ready for direct observation, but many wanted to see Sarah's methods in action. The station established a viewing platform with enhanced shielding, where less adventurous scientists could observe from safety. Sarah's work with the Keshtar began attracting attention from across the sector. Commander Threll visited the station personally to observe a surface expedition. The military coordinator watched through the cameras as Sarah sat among Keshtar cubs, gently grooming Scout's fur while explaining pack dynamics to her recording equipment. "This shouldn't be possible," Threll said, all three eyes wide. "Every tactical manual says predator species are unpredictable and dangerous." "They are dangerous," Sarah agreed. "But they're not unpre 6 months after Sarah's first encounter with Scout. A diplomatic transport ship entered orbit around Vrex Prime. Sarah stood at the viewing port, watching the purple and green planet slowly rotate below. Somewhere down there lived the Vrex, one of the 17 quarantined predator species that the Galactic Union had deemed too dangerous for contact. Keleth stood beside her, though the station director no longer maintained such careful distance. 6 months of working with Sarah had taught the Vrathan that not all predators were threats. But Keleth's ears still flattened when nervous, and they were flat now. "This is different from the Keshtar," Keleth said quietly. "The Vrex are classified as extreme danger for a reason. They've destroyed every probe and drone sent to their planet. They've attacked every ship that entered their orbit without invitation. They're defending their territory," Sarah said. "That's actually a good sign. It means they understand boundaries and respond to perceived threats. We just need to show them we're not a threat." Pix approached from behind, now wearing the insignia of a full researcher rather than a junior assistant. The young Vrathan had proven invaluable over the past months, acting as a bridge between Sarah's methods and the prey species researchers who struggled to understand predator psychology. "The Vrex have responded to our communication request," Pix reported. "They're willing to meet with us, but they have conditions. Only 3 representatives. No weapons. And we meet on their terms, at a location of their choosing." "Agreed," Sarah said immediately. Commander Threll materialized as a hologram nearby. "Dr. Chen, I must advise caution. The Vrex are not the Keshtar. They're larger, more aggressive, and have no history of peaceful contact with any species. Which is exactly why we need to try a new approach," Sarah countered. "The Vrex have been isolated for 200 years because every contact attempt has been military or defensive in nature. We approached them as threats, so they responded as threats. I want to approach them as potential allies." Threll's 3 eyes studied Sarah for a long moment. "You believe you can establish trust with them the same way you did with the Keshtar?" "I believe I can try," Sarah said. "Predators understand social hierarchy, territory, and respect. If I can demonstrate those things, we might be able to communicate." The landing party was carefully chosen: Sarah, Keleth, and Pix. 3 species representing the range of galactic life: predator, prey, and something in between. They transported down to the surface at coordinates provided by the Vrex, appearing in a clearing surrounded by towering red trees. The Vrex were waiting. Sarah had studied every image, every video, every scrap of data about the Vrex, but nothing prepared her for seeing them in person. They stood nearly 3 meters tall on powerful hind legs, with smaller forearms that ended in razor-sharp claws. Their scales were a deep blue-black that seemed to absorb light, and their eyes glowed with an inner orange fire. Crests of bone ran along their skulls and spines, giving them a fearsome, prehistoric appearance. 6 Vrex stood in a semicircle, radiating power and danger. Behind Sarah, she heard Keleth's breathing quicken and Pix whimper softly. Every instinct these prey species possessed screamed at them to run. But they held their ground, trusting Sarah's methods. Sarah took a slow breath and stepped forward. She kept her movements deliberate and non-threatening, her arms slightly away from her body to show she carried no weapons. She stopped at what she judged to be a respectful distance, acknowledging the Vrex territory without invading it. "I am Sarah Chen," she said, her translator device converting her words to the clicking, hissing language of the Vrex. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. We come seeking understanding, not conflict." The largest Vrex, a massive male with scars crossing his snout, stepped forward. His crest rose, making him appear even larger, more intimidating. "I am Crotch, war leader of the northern clans. You are human, a predator species. Your companions are prey. This is unusual." Sarah felt a surge of hope. Cratch was communicating, engaging in dialogue rather than immediate violence. "Yes, it's unusual. On my homeworld, predators and prey learn to coexist. We learn to communicate across the divide between hunter and hunted. I've come to share what we learned." Crotch's head tilted, a gesture remarkably similar to Scout's curious head tilt. "You speak of impossibility. Predators hunt prey. Prey flee predators. This is the way of nature." "It's one way," Sarah agreed, "but not the only way. May I show you something?" Crotch's crest lowered slightly, a sign Sarah interpreted as curiosity. "Show." Sarah pulled out a small display device and activated it. Holographic images appeared in the air between them, showing scenes from Earth. Humans working alongside horses, dogs playing with human children, cats sleeping in sunny windows, images of predators and prey living together, cooperating, forming bonds. The Vrex watched in silence, their glowing eyes fixed on the images. When Sarah showed footage of herself with the Keshtar cubs playing and grooming them, several Vrex made sounds that their translators identified as surprise. "This is real?" Crotch asked. "Not deception?" "It's real," Sarah said. "These images are from my homeworld and from my recent work on Theta 7. Predators are capable of choice. We can choose when to hunt and when to befriend. The galaxy has feared predator species because they only saw one side of what we can be." A smaller Vrex, female based on her coloring, stepped forward. "You speak of choice. But we are what we are. We are hunters. Killers. The prey species fear us because they should fear us. They fear you because they don't understand you," Sarah said. "But fear isn't the same as respect. Wouldn't you rather be respected than feared?" The female Vrex was quiet for a moment. "Explain the difference." Sarah chose her words carefully. "Fear is what prey feels when running from a hunter. It's instinct, panic, helplessness. Respect is what one warrior shows another warrior. It's acknowledgement of strength and choosing not to fight unnecessarily. Fear isolates you. Respect connects you." Crotch made a sound that the translator interpreted as thoughtful contemplation. "For 200 years we have been alone. No species approaches us without weapons, without fear. They see us only as monsters." "Because they don't know how to talk to you," Sarah said. "But I'm here to learn. Help me understand your ways and I'll help the galaxy understand you." One of the younger Vrex, barely adult-sized, suddenly darted forward. He moved with the speed of a striking snake, and before Sarah could react, he was directly in front of her. His jaws opened, showing rows of sharp teeth. His claws extended toward her throat. Behind Sarah, Keleth and Pix both cried out in alarm. But Sarah didn't move. She looked into the young Vrex's eyes and saw what the others might have missed. This wasn't an attack. This was a test. The young Vrex held his threatening position, waiting. Sarah took a slow breath, then did something that went against every human survival instinct. She tilted her head back, exposing her throat fully to those deadly jaws. It was a gesture of submission, of trust, of vulnerability. The young Vrex froze. His claws retracted slowly. His jaws closed. He stepped back, his crest lowering in what Sarah recognized as confusion or surprise. "You do not fear death?" the young Vrex asked. "I fear it," Sarah said honestly. "But I trust that you're testing me, not truly threatening me. Among predators, sometimes showing vulnerability is the greatest show of strength." Crotch made a sound that the translator labeled as a laugh, though it sounded like rocks grinding together. "She understands. The human understands predator honor." "Zrak, you meant to frighten her, but she called your bluff. The young Vrex." Zrak stepped back to the group, his crest now flat with something that might have been embarrassment. "My apologies, Crotch," Zrak said. "I wanted to test if the human's words matched her courage." "And what did you learn?" Crotch asked. "That she is brave," Zrak admitted. "Foolishly brave, perhaps, but brave." Crotch turned his attention back to Sarah. You speak of understanding between predators and prey. But how? My people have tried to communicate with the prey species of the Galactic Union. Always they respond with fear and weapons. Because they don't know your language, Sarah said. Not the words, but the body language, the social cues, the rules you live by. Let me show you. Sarah gestured for Kelleth to step forward. The Vrathan director moved forward on shaking legs, every muscle tense with terror. Cratch's eyes locked onto Kelleth, and Sarah saw the predatory focus intensify. Kelleth, Sarah said gently. Show Cratch your trust in me. Stand close. Kelleth moved to stand beside Sarah, though the director's ears remained flat with fear. Cratch leaned down, bringing his massive head level with Kelleth's. The Vrathan whimpered but didn't flee. Do you see? Sarah said to Cratch. Kelleth is terrified. Every instinct says to run, but Kelleth chooses to stay because we've built trust. That's the bridge between predator and prey. Cratch studied Kelleth closely. The small one shakes with fear but does not flee. This is courage, yes, Sarah said. And you're choosing not to hunt even though Kelleth would be easy prey. That's also courage. You're both making choices that go against your instincts. Cratch straightened to his full height, his crest rising in what Sarah now recognized as a gesture of respect. Sarah Chen, you speak wisdom. Perhaps there is a way forward. But it were